Audio made possible by www.jackettome.com. Audio Fanfiction Productions presents Wide Awake. Fanfiction written by Angscata003. Fanfiction inspired by the Twilight Saga written by Stephanie Meyer. Chapter 39. Persimmon Rest in Pieces.
Edward's point of view. It's 3 a.m. according to the alarm clock that was glowing green at me from my bedside table. Monday, March 1st, and I could hear the wind fucking howling outside the house as I clutched the pillow at my side. I'll remember this morning and this exact time with perfect clarity in the future. I'll be standing on a street somewhere, or driving in my car, or sitting in English class next to the smelly motherfucker, who never brings a pen, and I'll be utterly capable of recalling this precise moment without effort, despite any circumstance. It wasn't because it was the first day of the month, or the day my economy project was due. Not because only 6 hours earlier I had spoken to Carlisle in the kitchen for the first time in a week, and it was a mere fuck you that made him all sad yet hopeful. Not because it was 6 days until my birthday, and not even because I could finally go to school in 4 hours and see my girl after the long weekend. I'd remember it because it was the first night I slept without my girl. I'll remember falling asleep at midnight and waking up 3 hours later in my dark room to the most horrifically vivid dream I had ever encountered in my entire fucking life. I'll remember instinctively hugging the pillow that still held the faint scent of flowers and cookies. I'll remember the way I fucking shook and dug my nails into it like it could keep me in the present and drive away the past. I had caught a couple hours on Wednesday afternoon, during the day after I got home from school. I could almost still feel her warmth on me from where I held her in the halls, and I figured it would make it easier as I collapsed onto my bed lifelessly. I was a little cocky maybe, thinking perhaps they wouldn't come back after so long. As if my mind has simply been conditioned to just not do it after so many peaceful nights. Which was fucking bullshit. My mind was incapable of conditioning. And even though the dream on Wednesday afternoon was unseemly, it didn't result in this. Me laying sweaty and alone in my bed with the sheets tangled in my legs as I roughly shoved the pillow into my face with a muffled, frustrated sob. I weakly inhaled the lingering smell of Bella as I held it to my face, and fought to calm my breathing and tremors. It had been too long, and even though all of the long nights of love and affection with my girl were precious to me, they made me so goddamn soft. Obliterated the tough exterior shell my mind had created for the memories. It was right on the surface, invading my composure until I was forced into numbness. The numbness I could handle, but I knew from experience it would get old fast. I thrashed my feet free of the sheets, and finally sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed, and just fucking sitting there in the darkness with my chest heaving while I roughly rubbed at my face with a palm. Wet and sticky with sweat and tears. I hated crying. It was so fucking weak, and it just made my eyes heavier, which was not something I did. There was only one thing I could do. The same thing I always did when something like this happened. I stood up, and didn't even bother turning on the lamp as I threw on my jacket, and went to the balcony doors. I stared at my hand trembling on the handle for a moment, before I pushed it open, and stepped out into the gray night. The wind was still howling, blowing loose leaves across the backyard, below me in furious torrents as I lit a cigarette, and leaned back against the railing. My eyes instinctively went to one place, whenever I came out at night. Bella's window next door. I had to move to the farthest corner of the balcony to bring it into view, so I sat down with my back to the railing, facing the house, while I gazed at it curiously. Black. It was always black, which confused me, because the dark had to just make shit worse for her. It also made it fairly fruitless for me to bring her all of my books at school last week. I was hoping it might give her something to keep her occupied, while she was alone in there. We never had the chance for complete privacy, so I could never gauge how she was really dealing with it. I hoped the closet door being hidden helped, but I had no way of knowing. The routine was lost, and I wish I could say a new one replaced it those days following the incident. But I couldn't even call the shit I did a routine. I watched Bella deteriorate right before my eyes, as the week passed. Her eyes grew darker and heavy-lidded, a lot like mine. Her steps began to drag as I walked her to and from her classes, forced to slow my steps to accommodate her sluggish pace. Her goddamn cookie names grew progressively more disturbing as the significant events in her days became blatantly relatable to her exhaustion alone. She shrugged it off, well, because my girl was a silent sufferer like that, but she wasn't fooling anyone. I could see it in her eyes and know when she has slept. Not because of a lack of tired, but because of the fucking anxiety. She was always tense after she dreamed, darting her eyes around and flinching at every sound as we walked the halls. It was how I knew she had slept twice last week, though it probably wasn't enough, because she still looked like a zombie on Friday. Everyone had to have seen it. You'd have to be fucking blind not to. I didn't know what Esme was thinking, allowing this shit to get worse with every passing day. But I didn't see any give by Carlisle, so I figured it just didn't matter to them. Carlisle? Dr. Carlisle motherfucking Cullen. I was avoiding that asshole, like my girl avoided off-brand baking ingredients. I'd make certain our paths would never cross in the house, so I wouldn't have to face that sanctimonious prick anymore. Every time I did, it made me feel so fucking scrutinized and pissed off. Even last night, as I only muttered 2 little offensive words in the kitchen, he had that look on his face. The one that clearly said, I was telling him to go fuck himself, but at least I was talking to him again. What a dumb fuck. I didn't even realize he was standing behind me when the words left my mouth. Truthfully, I was just cursing the microwave that made something seemingly as simple as reheating leftovers seem like rocket science. I had the urge to spin around and angrily inform him I was actually bitching at his overpriced kitchen appliances, but that would have made me look insane. So I just rolled my eyes and left, escaping once again to my room, and feeling irritated that I had accidentally broken the silence between us. I continued gazing out at Bella's window as I finished my cigarette slowly. I was in no hurry to face that bed again. And as that thought floated through my fuzzy mind, I realized exactly what I should be doing. I wanted to slap myself in the forehead for not acting sooner. I jumped up and extinguished the cigarette, darting back into my room, and moving towards the door to the hall. It was dark in the house, and quiet, with the exception of him's loud-ass snore as I snuck past his door. The second-floor study was my destination, and I found the knob in the darkness, like I had done a million times before. Before Bella. I entered cautiously, and closed the door with a light click behind me. The study was dark and empty at night, with that same annoying clock ticking on the desk as I passed it, tossing it a pointed glare. I carefully stalked to the cabinet at the far side of the room, the one with the spare medication and supplies Carlisle usually kept on hand. The large metallic cabinet opened without even a creak or scrape to alert Daddy C to my whereabouts. My gaze immediately landed on the bottom shelf, second row of bottles, and fifth one back. Those beautiful amphetamines that would be my only savior for the night. I kneeled down and grabbed the bottle, opening it to pour a large amount of the contents into my hand because it would be too obvious to purloin the entire thing. I hastily shoved them into my pocket, returning the bottle to its original position, label angled 90 degrees askew. He'd never fucking notice. I smirked as I closed the cabinet, turning on my heel, to leave the study with one more glower at the ticking clock on the desk. I returned to my dark room undiscovered, finally turning on the lamp, and bathing the room in a dull gray light. The acoustic silence of my bathroom greeted me grimly as I stood over the sink, and turned on the tap. Splashing freezing cold water onto my face, and sighing at the focus it gave me to swallow down the wild pills in relief. I didn't take an overabundance of the medication. It only served one purpose to me, and unlike cocaine, it wasn't freakishly addictive. This was the time of night I began to load once again. Standing in the middle of the room, and looking around like a lost fucking puppy for something to keep me occupied. So I got out my sketchbook like always, flopping down on the bed, and opening to a clean, blank page. I stared at it, considering the dream I had woken up to, and rapidly tapped it with the eraser of my pencil. This was a problem for me. Wednesday night, it had become abundantly clear to me that somewhere along the way, sketching stopped helping with the memories. I tried to draw it out, moving the pencil over the page, and barely noticing when the drawing transformed into a rough portrayal of Bella's lips. I furrowed my brows at the page, and turned to another, blank sheet. But that one ended up becoming a perfectly clear rendition of her left wrist. It took me a moment to realize it was even Bella's wrist, but the little circular grease burn scar that the pencil created was unique to her wrist alone. It frustrated me to no end as I stared at the page, and desperately tried to determine why I couldn't sketch the memories anymore. I eventually reasoned, maybe it was because of her. Maybe when the page could be black and white with Bella, the grays of everything else lost importance to me, and I fucking loved sketching my girl, honestly. There were hundreds of little body parts and details that were just waiting to be put down on paper after that night. But it was still a problem for me because at the end of the day, I had lost my only outlet for it all. Sketching used to get it out of my head and buy me some peace for the coming day, but it wasn't working anymore. I desperately missed the way my girl used to lay me down when that kind of shit was bothering me and just ask me about it. It was such a simple gesture, but it worked better than anything else. Her hypnotizing whisper and tender caress that drew the demons from my head against my will. The way she would gaze intensely into my eyes, and smile with me, laugh with me, frown with me, cry with me. Shit. It would have been really fucking helpful right about now. But I didn't have that anymore, and I couldn't draw the dream. So, with a heavy sigh, I began sketching her on the bed. Before, I used to sketch her on the couch, but it wasn't close enough. Which was pretty fucking stupid, because it was just a goddamn drawing, but she just felt wrong on the couch. She belonged in my bed. I could feel the medicine steadily perking me up as it flowed through my bloodstream gloriously. It got me through the night alone, the same way it always used to. It made Bella's hair more realistic on the page of the sketchbook, as my pencil floated over the black and white with ease. Everything became finer and more detailed as the sun began to rise. Her round belly button, her tiny elbow, her bare shoulder, and the way her hair poured in delicate waves across my pillow, and smothered it in flowers and cookies and perfection, and fucking Christ. I couldn't wait to get to that parking lot when school started. I probably should have stopped taking the pills that morning as I showered and got ready for school, but I didn't. Because as I brushed my teeth and stared drowsily at her little blue toothbrush that was no longer used, I decided I needed more time to be alert with her. To notice the little things that the drowsiness eclipsed. I passed Carlisle on the way out the door in the hall, and he was still looking at me and smiling all fucking annoyingly hopeful, even halting his steps as I approached him with my bag slung over my shoulder carelessly. But I pushed past him and kept my eyes fixed straight ahead. I got that familiar, immediate bang of guilt for brushing him off so callously as I exited the house without looking back in his direction. But once I was outside and leaning against the door to the Volvo, it all disappeared. Because my girl walked out the front door of the Brandon house. And she looked so fucking rough. Her face was pale and taut, and she didn't look like she had even been eating for the last 8 days. Those full pouty lips were white and chapped, and her fucking eyes were drooping, and purple and bloodshot. Already. We locked tired gazes from across the yards, like we did every day the previous week, and shared a familiar knowing look as I pushed off the door of my car. Because she should be riding with me, and we both knew it. It'd give us more time together, and we could talk without all the fucking people watching us, but I never pushed it, because Carlisle was always home when I left for school, and I got the feeling he was watching for that kind of shit. It effectively erased any guilt I may have been feeling for being a complete dick to him. She smiled at me tightly, reaching for the door handle of the yellow Porsche as she quickly turned away, and shielded her tired expression with her flat, brown hair. But I wanted to run over there and grab her fucking arm and drag her back into my house. I wanted to pull her up the stairs, storm into the study, stand her right in front of Carlisle, and fucking show him what this was causing. I was stronger than her. I could tough this out for as long as I needed. But not Bella. I couldn't stand seeing her like the way she was before me, like I hadn't made any difference at all. It made me sick as I drove to pick up Jesse. He kept silent, as we made our way to the school. He knew me well enough to know the lack of sleep had made me irritable. Or at least that's what he thought.